Sleeping Bastions. To Alex, it might as well have been magic. The bright light that brought him and the muscle bound man named Bennett halfway around the world made him feel as though he'd been spit through the clouds. There was no ground, or up, or left or right, while at the same time there was an immense sense of movement, like when his grandfather used to speed down the highway in his 72 Chevelle with Alex in the back seat, multiplied by 1,000. Then, as quickly as it had left him, reality came rushing back. Weight was upon his legs. Warmth touched his skin. Air was in his lungs, and a stale, stagnant scent filled his nostrils. No longer in a filthy, wet alley, Alex was keeled over in a mute-toned room, being steadied by Izaiah, who was grinning with what teeth he had. "Puking's fine, if you gotta. Seen it before," the old man said. Alex shook his head, trying to rattle away the mixture of pain and euphoria coursing through him from the trip through the white light. Isaiah pulled out a chair from a plain wooden table and sat him down. "Take a seat. Relax. Everyone has a hard time after their first shift. Nothing to be ashamed of. How you holding up, Bennett?" Isaiah went to steady him, as he had Alex, but was pushed away by the soldier. "The hell was that? What did you do to me?" Bennett grumbled like a garbage disposal. "I told you, it's called shifting," Isaiah said. "Heck of a way to travel if you gotta cover a long distance in a short time. Basically, we turn into energy and pass through different frequencies until we find the right one. Sorry not to warn you, but in my experience, there's no good way of doing that. I didn't want us speaking any more in the alley than we had to. There are prying eyes and ears everywhere. But don't worry, we're safe here. Very private. So, Bennett, take a seat. You're making me nervous." Bennett took one step toward the table before buckling over and vomiting. "There it is," Isaiah said with a comforting grin Bennett did not seem to appreciate. "Shifting can be a pain. No shame in being shook up. There was a human I took through an Eve gate once. Must have been a few hundred years ago now. Damascus, I think his name was. He had some real problems. Whew! What a mess, let me tell ya," Isaiah chuckled. "Actually, now that I think of it, he might have died. Human matter can't pass through the Eve unless tempered first." Bennett rose quickly and straightened up, as though trying to hide his moment of weakness, but unable to do anything about the shade of green flushing his face. "Just tell me where we are and what we're doing here." "You're not in Arizona anymore, I can tell you that," Isaiah said. "This is one of our safe houses. Got 'em hidden all over the world. Me and the other Medolians can come here to rest, gather supplies, or get away from any threatening parties on our tail. Of course, I don't think anyone's been here in some time. Things have been quiet in this part of the world for a while." "Safe house?" Alex asked, taking a look around. The room reminded him of the black and white photos his grandparents had in their basement bathroom of settler homes in the Old West. Plain, simple, mostly empty, covered in dust, with little more than some shelves, a bucket, and a couple of pots and pans, and a dining table with 4 chairs. A short hall extending from the main room was lined with 2 wooden doors, likely bedrooms of a sort. Much like the old man who brought them here, nearly everything about the safe house was gray. Gray walls, gray doors, gray shelves. Even the wood flooring was gray. The only room with an ounce of color was what appeared to be a kitchen, though it was not like any Alex had ever seen. A sink was featured, but no faucet, and no fridge, with uncovered shelves lining the wall filled with foggy jars and small wooden boxes. Outside a single window on the far wall, Alex saw a blazing desert that was not his. This one was more feral and hazardous, with miles of rocky, rolling hills dotted with dark green bushes controlling the horizon. "Okay, just stay calm. Everything will be fine. For the love of God, stay calm. Everything will be fine." Bennett dropped into the seat beside Alex, nursing his left temple. "Where are we exactly?" "I won't answer that," Isaiah started. "Mostly because I'm not entirely sure. Names of regions and countries are always changing, and it seems to offend people when I'm not up to speed. Also, because I don't want to give you guys any ideas or feed any plans of escape you might be mulling over. There's nothing out there but endless barren desert. You can't escape, so don't think about it. Just no." Though I suppose there's no harm in telling you that we're somewhere in Northeast Africa. Alex and his mantra were stopped flat. Africa? Fuck off, Bennett said. Izaiah stifled a laugh. Believe it. The hell are we doing in Africa? Bennett asked. Like I said, we need your help. You and Mr. Barker were selected to act as independent arbiters to help us solve our runaway demon problem. It's all a simple formality, and a ridiculous one at that, but still, we have to do what we have to do. I brought you here because we have reason to believe the demon stowed away on board a ship and arrived at Diomede Port 2 months ago, heading south. His trail's long since gone cold, but we're pretty sure he's on the continent. Why is yet to be determined. This safe house is nowhere near his last known whereabouts, so you both will stay comfortably out of the whole affair. Maybe even soak up a little sun. The Senate might be able to force me to go along with this stupid game, but you fellas don't need to be any more involved than you need to be on paper. Exorcisms and archfiend arrests are no joke, but if we play our cards right, we should be able to get you both in and out of this quickly and send you on your way. I just need you fellas to play along. This is where you'll spend the majority of your time in service to the unearthed Senate. I only need one thing from the both of you. Every day, step out, look around, then come right back inside and shut the door. That's it. Don't need to find anything, don't need to do anything. We just need to be able to say you fellas gave finding the demon a shot. Any questions so far? Yeah, just one. Who the fuck do you think you are, and why do you think I'll give a shit? Bennett asked with abhorrence. Oh, me? Izaiah didn't skip a beat. Nobody important, same as everyone else. But I am trying to help you fellas. I hope you believe me when I tell you that. I don't believe anything, Alex said, seemingly catching the other two off guard. Why should I? None of this makes any sense. You're talking in circles about, what, heaven and hell? You can't just... I was shot yesterday and nobody is acting like it happened. I prefer to call them high wind and arrows, or the worlds of creation and destruction, but sure, yes. Oh, and it wasn't yesterday, Izaiah said. What do you mean? Of course it was, Alex said. I can still see it happening. I can still feel the bullet. It's... That night will always be with you, Alex, Izaiah started. But it wasn't yesterday. It was 25 days ago. No. Alex's legs went numb above the knee. That can't be true. Izaiah gave a forlorn sigh. Today's date is Sunday, October 15th. And as I said, you fellas were sent to Highwind and Arrows to be imbued with Eve, making you official representatives of each shade. The kingdoms insisted they would need the time to ensure you survived the procedure. I was thrilled to see you both made it. Tell you the truth, I'd already gotten kind of fond of you. 25 days? But that could mean... Alex felt his voice catch in his throat. My baby girl might have been born. But how can... He trailed off. Melissa, I'm sorry. I will make it up to you. I will. Bennett stood and paced the room, staring down the old man as though he wanted nothing more than to break his jaw with an uppercut. You think this is funny? Messing with people like this? You think you get to play with our lives? I think you need to calm down, young man, Izaiah said, nose down, eyes up, in a sudden cold turn, bringing a chill to the room. Learn not to look a gift horse in the mouth. With a conceding grunt, Bennett sat at the table. I did my time in public service and got out in one piece. So tell me why I owe you or anyone, I don't know who you think you're talking to, but I'm nobody's errand boy. Soonest chance I get, I'm out of here. And where will you go? Izaiah asked, blissfully unaffected by Bennett's vigor. Anywhere but here. Doesn't matter. I'm pretty resourceful. I can get around. And I also don't believe for a second we're on the other side of the planet. Please, for your own sake, just do as I ask. Stay here and keep the door shut. It's the only way to mask your energy signatures, Izaiah said. We have to be careful, or else this could end up going sideways. For all of us. I know it stinks. I know this is no fun, but this was the best plan I could come up with on such short notice. It'll involve a lot of boredom on your parts, but at least you'll be safe. You keep saying that, Bennett said. Safe from what? If this is such a big deal, shouldn't we be an actual part of it? I've had my fair share of manhunts. You say it's a demon we're hunting? Shit, that's new. Load me up. Let's do it. Isaiah's grin and feather light air returned. I don't doubt you'd be able to help, Mr. Hunter, and thank you for the offer. But no, catching an archfiend is no joke. And also, he hesitated, licking his lips. I wasn't going to tell you fellas this, but rather than risk you going for a jaunt and running into trouble, I will. The runaway demon is not our only critical concern at the moment. For several years, we've been gathering reports of the Raytheon cult reconstituting itself on Earth. A mean set of characters who worshipped Wrath for thousands of years, attempting to cultivate as much of it as possible, until they were extinguished more than 2 millennia ago. Though now it seems they're back, and a large portion of the sightings have taken place on this continent. Sorry to say, for too long we ignored the reports because there wasn't any credible evidence, just hearsay. Now that we know, the Senate doesn't believe the sudden rise of the Raytheons and a rogue archfiend stealing a body and making his way to Africa are related. But I do. Sadly, it has my team stretched thin.
I haven't followed this guy at all. As Melissa would say, dude, you make less sense than terms and agreements.
Alex and Bennett shot the old man curious glances. The other Medolian sentries, he answered. Think of us as caretakers of the planet. Catching creatures like Joseph and putting them back where they belong is part of the job. But this particular one has been, well, difficult. He's somehow able to mask his Eve, same as this safe house will yours, which has us stumped. But still, I remain confident we'll have him in custody soon. And once the demon has been exorcised, I'll come back for you fellas, and we can escort him to the tribunal together, where he'll stand trial. After that, your civic duties will be concluded. Hugs and milkshakes.
Return for us? You're leaving?
Alex asked. I'll be back in a couple of days. Promise. In the meantime, help yourself to the food in the pantry. Most of it's Highwind and Nashwind based, I'm assuming, so it should be healthy and technically shouldn't go bad. Also, there's a freshwater well out back. Maybe think of this all as a role-playing game. Try to have some fun with it, eh? That's what I do. Just bear with me for a little while.
This is fucking insane. Do you hear yourself?
Bennett asked. I understand this is hard to take in. I'm plenty used to all this crap, so to me it's old hat. But I can see how you two might not believe it. I'd hoped experiencing a shift might convince you, but I can see it'll take more. The old man continued to try to explain, but by the end of the talk, Alex felt like he knew less than when they'd arrived. Every notion he'd ever considered about life after death seemed to be dead wrong.
This guy isn't a devil or an angel. I don't know what he is. Is this really happening? If so, why did he pick us? And does this mean there's no heaven? I mean, come on.
Izaiah continued stressing the importance of keeping the door closed at all times. And don't let anyone in but me, got it? Then, as mysteriously as he'd come into their lives, without providing any sense of closure, the old man slammed down his cane and was literally gone in a flash, leaving Alex and Bennett to fend for themselves in a wooden cottage in the middle of a desolate African mountain range.
But he lied. He wasn't back in 2 days. Or 3.
It had been 4 days with no word from Izaiah. 4 arid days and tedious nights, which gave Alex nothing but time to think, fend off panic attacks, miss his wife desperately, and hate everything about his new living situation and roommate, who appeared incapable of communicating anything other than contempt. Several times he tried to have a conversation with the man, and several times was shut down. Why don't you mind your own business and I'll mind mine? Bennett suggested.
Fine by me.
Alex was by no means desperate to get to know the guy. He was just tired of listening to his stomach rumble, as both he and Bennett refused to eat what was in the kitchen area after opening the glass jars and wooden boxes in the pantry the first day. The jars contained either a dark blue or murky green goo, which stunk like mothballs, while the boxes contained what looked like rye biscuits wrapped in cheesecloth, but smelled like rotten onions and salty garbage. With no vegetation to forage, nor animals to hunt, it seemed starvation was his and Bennett's destination. The soldier even went so far as to try to find edible insects for them, but came up empty-handed. Not that Alex relished the suggestion all that much. It was simply better than dying. His bearded companion hadn't come out and said he was ex-military, But Alex noticed his marine tattoo mixed in with the others the night they awoke in the alley. Bennett was also condescending as hell, sometimes spoke with a sharp, drill sergeant like tone, and occasionally let phrases slip like solo and recon. He also struck Alex as a guy who'd spent many nights sleeping under the stars, fending for himself, and who preferred being alone to working with others. However difficult, even alarming at times, Alex was thankful to have him, because being around another like himself was the only thing convincing him he wasn't losing his mind. The voices, which began the night he woke in the alley, as well as the strange feelings piggybacking on them, hadn't given him more than an hour's peace since he and Bennett first arrived at the safe house. Until this week, Alex had never in his life been assailed by so much anger or urges of violence, eventually reduced to convincing himself he was merely having a psychotic episode.
As if that's better.
Several times he heard Bennett speaking to himself and also reacting to people and things that weren't there, only to deny it when questioned. Something inscrutable was happening to both of them, though neither seemed ready to admit it yet. At the end of the second day, unable to take the hunger any longer, Alex decided to try the food provided by the safe house, taking a small bite of one of the pungent biscuits in the wooden boxes. The morsel tasted as bad as it smelled,
Worse.
but to his amazement, made him feel leagues better, and filled his belly for at least a few hours. Since then, they had lived exclusively on the fetid food Bennett described as trash biscuits. There was no conversation when the two men ate. Alex still knew nothing about Bennett's death, and could only fill in the gaps in his origin by guessing, using his tattoos as a guide.
Let's see. There's a lot of smudgy sections, hard to make out, some tribal stuff, and I do get the feeling either he's from Texas or he's lived there. I'm also sensing a fondness for the legend of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. In fact, he might be a straight up Renaissance nerd because that's definitely a wizard on his tricep.
As time passed like molasses, once a day they did as requested, and stepped out to search for the enigmatic demon.
Joseph. That can't really be his name, right? A demon named Joseph?
The first 2 days there was nothing to see but the sterile landscape acting as a prison. But on the third day, Bennett swore he saw signs of fire in the distance. "Might be people out there," he said. "A day's walk, at most." When Alex reminded him of Izaiah's cautionary tale about the hate-worshipping cult, whose name he'd already forgotten, and tried to hint the key to survival when lost was to stay put, he was summarily shut down. "We're not lost. We were abducted. How many times you had to survive, Al?" In no position to argue, Alex let it go. The soldier had years of training and experience he didn't, which meant the elementary school teacher had been permanently relegated to being a dependent observer. "It's our best bet," Bennett reiterated. The thought of traversing the landscape outside the confines of the safe house scared Alex, though not nearly as bad as the prospect of spending another day away from Melissa. Up until now, they'd never spent more than 48 hours apart, which had only happened when he'd gotten stuck at the John Glenn Columbus International Airport during a blizzard for 2 days after moving his grandparents into an assisted living facility in Upper Arlington.
That alone was tough. But this?
When the fourth day came, and there was still no sign of Izaiah, he agreed with Bennett for the first time. They had to take matters into their own hands. It was time to try their luck in the desert. It was time to leave. The day of their departure, Alex couldn't sleep.
What else is new?
Bennett decided they would travel at night, the idea being that they would rest during the day, and then march as far as possible once the sun was down. The trek into barren wilderness would be a complete unknown, with no destination or real goal other than to find people. When Alex asked about their route, south was all Bennett had said, pointing off in the distance.
That helps a lot. Thanks.
Turning on his pillow, trying to get comfortable for the millionth time, Alex covered his ears, fending off Bennett's snoring, which echoed around the small house like a rattling children's toy, and reminded him, oddly, of his wife. She could nap anywhere, too.
Sleep, damn it. Come on.
The coming night would be laborious, and every bit of strength he could muster was going to be essential. Though part of him was relieved he couldn't doze off, because every time he did, he felt the fire from the night he was shot. When awake, Alex was sometimes able to forget the burn, but in his dreams, it always came rushing back. He could only scream for relief, waking in a sweaty panic on his straw cot, sometimes forgetting where he was and how he got there, until Bennett could get him under control. Patting himself down in a haze, he would often expect to feel blistered, charred skin ready to fall off the bone, only marginally happier when it all turned out to be in his head. The red fire in his dreams reminded Alex of the night he'd nearly burned down his grandparents' house and sustained third-degree burns on his left hand, following a grease fire in the kitchen.
I was trying to make fried chicken. Then Melissa told me we were expecting.
When his wife had come home, she'd tried to break the good news gently, knowing how easily Alex was startled, but was unsuccessful. "I want to tell you something, but I think you should sit down first," she said, diving into the fridge and handing him a beer. Melissa would usually open one for herself in the evenings after work, but since she was making him drink alone, he could tell something unusual was going on. Not wanting to leave the chicken to burn in the pan, he opted to stand and hear the news. "I won't freak out, honest," he said, planting his feet.
Big mistake.
"What's up?" "We need to call your grandma," she said. Several red flags arose in his mind. "Why?" "To let her know she's going to be a great grandparent." Not only did Alex freak out and stumble back looking for balance, but also slammed the handle of the frying pan, sending flaming grease spilling over the stove and kitchen floor. Putting the flame out took nearly as long as the fire department took to arrive, and by the end, not only was their kitchen carpeted with baking soda and table salt, but most of Alex's arm up to the elbow required immediate medical attention.
Turned out attacking the flames with a dish rag was a bad idea.
Sitting in the emergency room an hour later, well drugged, waiting to hear if he would need skin grafts or not, he and Melissa held hands and laughed, feeling nothing but joy and love. "You know, in a way, this was a good thing," she said, getting an aghast stare from her husband. "Wait, hear me out. I know I tease you a lot for your anxiety, and you're always a good sport, but tonight I didn't see it. You didn't hesitate. You rushed in to protect us and what we have. I knew I could count on you, but it was great to see just how much. I'm proud of you." She'd never spoken to him like that before. When Melissa crawled into the hospital bed with him that night in the ER, just a few floors down from where their baby would be born 8 months later, and laid her head on his chest, it was the most like a man Alex had ever felt.
And now it's gone. All except the burn.
Presently, in the Midolian safe house, the soldier sniffed and adjusted his position. He was awake. Alex checked his analog watch. 5:27 p.m. The plan was to rise at 5:30.
How does he do that? Does the military train people to wake up on time?
"You up?" Bennett asked with his usual curt tone, rising and stretching, cracking enough bones to sound like someone was slowly dropping walnuts onto the floor. He'd never used the cots in the safe house bedrooms, saying he preferred the ground. "Yeah," Alex replied. "Did you sleep?" "A little." The teacher rose and made his way out back to the well to splash some water on his face and arms, and began packing the makeshift backpack he'd constructed out of 2 burlap sacks and some rope he found in the kitchen area. The 2 boxes of trash biscuits they packed would last longer than the 6 jars they'd emptied to use as water jugs. Despite constantly daring one another to try the stuff, neither man ever brought themselves to eat the blue, supposed food, once contained within. A decision Alex would have been perfectly comfortable dying over. Lumbering to the safe house entrance, nursing the bullet wound pulsing under his rib cage, he gazed over the horizon as the sun began setting behind the rocky hills. "You sure you don't have any questions?" Bennett asked as they stepped out. "Seems simple enough." Alex tried to sound as unworried as possible. Bennett laid out the basics anyways. "Keep your mouth closed. Breathe through your nose. Don't hurry or exert too much energy. We'll halt for water every 2 hours. If you feel faint, stop." "I'm ready." "Keep telling yourself that." Bennett closed the safe house door behind them. Moving onto the level plateau Alex had once referred to as their porch, in an attempt to lighten a particularly bleak afternoon, the duo started down the hill, traversing jagged boulders and patches of dirt as the sky became a muted orange. A short way into the hike, Alex turned to take a final glance at the small shack that had housed them for the past 4 days and 3 nights. To his amazement, he could not find it anywhere, as though it had vanished into thin air, or never existed at all.
Whatever. Good riddance.
Looking ahead, he saw a vast expanse riddled with mountain ranges, hillsides, and canyons, and was already having trouble keeping up with Bennett's pace. The soldier's boots held up much better in the terrain than Alex's paint splattered sneakers. Think we could slow up for a minute? He asked once, scampering up a sandy hill that gave way with each step. But Bennett said nothing, keeping his speed constant. As night folded over and the stars came out brilliantly, a refreshing breeze began to roll off the dunes of sand to their left, while the looming black shapes of Rocky Mountains to their right conquered the horizon, highlighted along their edges by a half moon rising. Alex spent the majority of the trek imagining the look on Melissa's face when he would inevitably walk back through their front door, finally able to hold her and tell her everything was going to be okay. He had not seen her in so long that every demonic voice that thrashed its teeth and whispered of sin in his mind was a joy by comparison.
I'm coming home, honey. Dead or not.
Any idea how far we've gone? He asked, again receiving no response. Cool, thank you. You're a great travel companion, you know that? Really instilling a lot of confidence. The soldier's march continued, and Alex felt fury building in his gut. Fine, you're not going to talk? I'll talk for both of us. Let's see. A week ago, I was painting a nursery for my kid. That's something. Never done that before, you know? Paint a whole room. I've done all sorts of home repairs. Lots of drywall, tile floors, posts and banisters. I've even dabbled with acrylic and watercolor paints, but no, never painted a whole room. I think it was fun. Hope I did it right. He paused, just in case Bennett might have something to say.
Figured he would have told me to shut up by now.
But woodworking is my real passion, he continued. Got a workshop at home. Still not very good. Can't plane worth a damn, but I think I'm getting better. I've just been so focused on these doves I was making. Then it all got sort of sidetracked when we found out. I was so looking forward to being a father, you know? I mean, I was scared, like crazy scared, but I still wanted it, you know? No, I don't. Now please shut up, Bennett said.
There it is.
You've never thought about being a dad? Alex asked, trying for jovial. Bennett spun to face him with eyes as fierce as a jungle cat. I said I don't want to talk, so I'm not going to. I don't care about your life, or your crafts, or watercolors. How the fuck are you not getting this? Or are you the world's stupidest teacher? Alex fought to control his hands and knees shaking. I don't understand. Are you afraid of someone hearing us? Isn't that the point? He cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted to the hills. Hello! Bennett grunted and walked on. That's not it. Then what? I just don't want to talk. Some of us need human interaction, you know. It might do you some good to give it a shot. Alex trailed after him, keeping on his heels. Because this situation we're in is extraordinarily, extraordinary? And I'm still not sure why I'm a part of it. Are you? 1 minute, I'm expecting to wake up in a hospital. Or not at all. And the next... Alex stopped himself and moved on before the burn took over his mind. I mean, how do I know you're not a part of all this? How do I know I can trust you? Am I walking to my doom? How do I know this isn't a trick to get me to trust you, Let my guard down? Bennett asked. I'm in the same boat. We're both on our own. I'm not in on this, I can promise you that, Alex assured him. Don't worry, I know, Bennett replied. It was just an example. How do you know?
And what do you mean by that?
Because I don't think you're capable of manipulation on that scale, Bennett said. You're a basic street guy. Met a million of you. Alex was surprised at how much he was offended. You don't even know me. I know enough. If you're so smart, tell me how we ended up here. Bennett grunted. His frustration was clearly boiling over. Like I said 100 times already, I have no idea. I'm supposed to be dead. You think I want to be here? Now? Stuck with me? Alex asked. Bennett shook his head with a sudden sense of calm and sadness. No, alive. It was the first time Bennett had spoken about his own death since the night in the alley with Izaiah. The conversation ended, and they marched for a few minutes with only the sound of dirt crunching under their shoes. Do you believe what Izaiah said? Alex asked eventually. About the kingdoms of destruction and creation, and their contract of no interference? I mean, heaven and hell? Gotta be something else. If you're asking, do I believe that nut job, the answer's no. Obviously, we aren't dead. How can you say that? Are you breathing? Bennett asked. Yeah. I rest my case. Strange things happen, but the universe has rules. Whatever's going on here, my guess is it's just as disappointing as the rest of existence. You're the guy who sits with his arms crossed at a magic show, huh? Alex asked. The soldier moved on, but Alex swore he spotted the tiniest grin on his face. As they neared the top of a ridge, where Alex was hoping to see some twinkling lights below, he found only pale blue darkness instead. Marching into the gully, he began to feel the precious hours of sleep he was missing, and struggled to find something to keep his mind occupied and away from remembering the burn. Then Bennett did the unthinkable. Next minute, what? He asked. Alex didn't register the question. He was so far removed from expecting it. I'm sorry? You said, 1 minute I'm expecting not to wake up, then stopped. What happened next? Did you see something? The soldier asked. I don't remember. Bennett pressed. Come on, you remember anything? Alex only remembered sounds and feelings, fighting for air, and of course, the burn. While it lasted, he remembered thinking nothing could be worse. It felt like falling, at first. Then I could feel someone, or maybe there were many of them, watching me, looming over me. The rest is just... I don't want to think about it. Bennett was all ears for the first time. Nodding, he reciprocated. I remember falling too, and this ache. There was a table, I think, and I was strewn out, like an open cadaver. They had me, and there was so much weight and pressure and light. Rigid. Everything was so rigid and cold, like all the warmth and goodness had been pulled out of me. It felt like everything, gravity, momentum, strength. There was so much, inside and out. I wanted to burst and be done with it, but they kept going. I begged, but they didn't care. Bennett slowed to a crawl, his eyes fixed on the ground as though he were allowing himself to relive this for the first time. Then I woke up, and a hobo told me I was part of something I didn't have a choice in, with a stranger who I have nothing in common with, other than apparently dying at the worst possible time. The soldier finished, his usual enmity creeping in. I thought you didn't believe that, Alex said. I don't believe anything anymore, but that doesn't mean I give up. All I have is my gut, and right now it's saying, go this way. You don't have to follow me, you know. Funny thing to have in common, huh? Being dead, Alex said, keeping pace. Extremely funny. Want to talk about it? How it happened, I mean? No, and don't ask about it ever again. Bennett said as blunt as could be. Alex shut up for 20 minutes and admired the vibrant nighttime horizon, his thoughts lingering on nights spent with Melissa in their backyard under the stars, talking.
Why didn't I marry her sooner?
You know, going through something like this, it makes all the stupid little stuff that filled your life seem so... meaningless, Bennett finished his sentence. Not what I was going to say. It is. Trust me, Bennett said. There's a few things in life you can see, things that break the mirror, ruin the fantasy. I've seen them all. Are you talking about your time in the service? Alex asked. It's okay if you don't want to get into it. I just think it might help is all. Bennett sighed. Look, I appreciate it. You're not wrong to try. It's nothing personal. Just realize I'm not going to talk about this stuff. Not with you or anyone. That's fair, Alex said, leaving it alone for only a moment before asking, Were you serving during 9/11? Bennett nodded, his eyes growing distant, filling with unkind memories. Joined 6 months before Desert Storm. Lasted till '03. Yeah, I was in it. All of it. He then seized and dropped to a knee, grabbing his ears, as though protecting them from a monstrous noise. A painful groan escaped him as his body shook violently. Hey, you okay? What's going on? Alex asked. You don't hear that? Bennett shouted, grabbing his sides and chest, moaning. Then, with a shudder, the agony seemed to leave him, and he snapped to, stone-faced. It's okay. I'm okay. Give me a minute. He was clearly disoriented, looking around as though someone else were with them. What was it? Alex asked. Bennett shook his head as if he were getting snow out of his hair, then turned toward the horizon and visibly pulled his shoulders back to stand taller. Nothing. Just some residual effects of whatever drugs that Izaiah guy gave us. That's not honestly what you think. How else do you explain neither of us remembering the trip to Africa? Bennett asked. Do you finally admit that's where the light brought us? Enough! Bennett shouted. There was no light, no magic. There was only a sick old man who kidnapped us and brought us here. So you deny anything strange is going on? Alex asked. Tell you what, if we find a mermaid, a vampire, or the abominable snowman out here, I'll start to believe. Until then... Bennett's voice was fading as he got further away. Alex hurried to catch up as he neared the top of yet another embankment. You really don't remember the feeling when he teleported us? He didn't teleport us. He knocked us out and flew our bodies. It's fucked up. It's weird. I don't get it, but there it is. We're not dead. Please understand that. How can you think this is so simple? I'm feeling and hearing stuff I never have before, and it's getting worse by the minute. Judging by your little fit just now, I'm not the only one. Alex finished, catching up to Bennett, who was staring into the eastern distance. Following his gaze, Alex saw a nearly indistinguishable trace of smoke rising and dissipating. A faint glimmer of orange light was at its base. Is that what I think it is? Alex asked. Yes. Bennett was already making his move down the path, full of rocky terrain, boulders, and miniature canyons. Alex followed as best he could, resisting the urge to get excited, hoping they would reach the fire before it went out, and they lost track of its source. The care it took to cross the East Valley left the two men nearly silent during the hike, and by the early morning fatigue was setting in. Alex's muscles and joints screamed for sleep. His mind ached. He needed water, but had already taken his drink for the hour. Even Bennett was slowing. Alex eventually allowed himself to check his watch. 4:03 a.m. He was about to suggest stopping for the evening. The thought of an additional hour was torture. Then they came over a ridge as the eastern horizon began to show the first signs of sunrise. Nestled below was a small collection of houses, stables, farms, shacks, and concrete service buildings. Several buildings had power and working lights, but at least 3 had been reduced to heaps of ash and smoldering wood. Alex also made out a charred car chassis.
Must have burned through the whole night.
He and Bennett moved with renewed spirits, starting into a bushy field amid a valley of sand. Soon, they were on a flat straightaway, headed for the collection of buildings, and Alex wanted to run. Electric power meant communication, phones. He might even be able to hear Melissa's voice within the hour.
It could be daytime back home. Not that it matters. She'll still want to hear from me. I'm coming, honey. Hang on.
Alex was so set on the path that he hadn't noticed Bennett divert to the side. Parker, the soldier whispered harshly. Backtracking, Alex joined him among a clump of bushes, where they kept low, peering at the village, roughly 100 yards away. What are we waiting for? Alex asked, his foot tapping like an anxious dog ready to go outside. We're so close. Bennett's eyes scanned the town with skepticism. I don't like it. Don't like what? The fire? They might need help. Let's go. Alex stood, but was forced back down, out of sight. Those fires look random. And why the truck? If they were fighting fires, where is everyone? And look, no animals. Bennett pointed at the empty fields surrounded by fences outside of town. Most of these people in these towns are farmers of some sort. At the least, they need milk and meat. I don't see a single chicken or goat. Everything checked out fine to Alex, but Bennett's tone had grown grave and flat, too engrossed to offer any color. The duo waited a few more minutes, seeing nothing. Do we just sit here? What if people need our help? Alex asked. Hang on a second, Bennett muttered. Do you want to wait for sunlight? I said hang on a second. Bennett didn't bother looking at him. We need to know what we're dealing with. I'll find out. You stay here. Alex kept quiet as Bennett rose and hurried towards the buildings.
What a dick.
Soon Bennett was out of sight, and Alex was left to wait, watching the horizon meet with lighter and lighter shades of blue until yellow bled into the mix. With the new light, he spotted one of the missing goats from the village in a nearby field. It was lying on its side, its innards strewn about and surrounded by a fog of flies. A small brown falcon was picking voraciously at the meat. Looking away and trying to ignore it, Alex grew bored, reduced to drawing in the sand with his finger. Soon after, a scream erupted from somewhere in the village.
That wasn't Bennett.
Springing to his feet, he charged into town, leaving the satchel of water jars and trash biscuits behind. Rounding the largest house, Alex barreled up the dirt road splitting the village, his feet on the pavement and his frantic breathing making the direction of the sounds hard to make out. 2 loud bangs rattled him. Shotgun blasts. The shack to his right lit up. Alex pitched forward and stumbled into the wall, hearing 2 voices. One was Bennett. The other was a mystery man. La Derar! La Derar! Bennett shouted. Another gunshot. The wall 5 feet from Alex exploded. Light from inside the shack poured onto the dirt. He bit his hand so as not to make a sound, feeling his spine stiffen as the gunshot sent his mind back to the night in the Thai restaurant and the deep sleep afterward. Inside, Bennett sounded increasingly desperate. Barat Sagos! Fuck, what else? Listen, I'm not trying to... Another gunshot rang. Metal was cleaved. The other voice shouted from the rear of the shack. Few words were clear. Laissez. Mort. Maison. He's speaking French, Alex shouted into the hole in the wall. Bennett, it's French. Nous ne vous voilà aucun mal.
I hope that means we're here as friends.
Alex was rusty, at best, but the chaos inside ceased, so he continued. Salut! Salut! Parlez-vous anglais? Bennett was quiet inside.
Hope he's not dead. Again.
Then came the sound of feet rustling through papers and silverware, and the man spoke, much calmer. Non, little bit.
Damn, French it is.
First, Alex introduced himself. Je m'appelle Alex. The man inside went off with a tirade of words Alex couldn't keep up with. Judging by his tone, he was confused and scared, and likely thought of them as attackers. Alex grabbed one word. Entre. Enter. He took a deep breath, moving toward the front door. Okay, coming in now. Please don't shoot. Je suis sympa. That means friendly, right? He tried to sound as amiable as possible. Pushing the door open, he immediately found Bennett crouched on the floor to his right, behind a metal stove, clutching a pan like a club. His eyes were on a wooden door at the other end of the small room, its top half blown away, probably by the shotgun. What little furniture there was had been torn to bits. Flower pots and framed paintings were shattered. The walls were scathed and smeared with blood. Alex pushed the door fully open and held his hands up. Get down, you idiot, Bennett whispered. I don't think he wants to kill anyone. He's trying to scare us off, Alex said calmly. We're friendly, like Bob Newhart. Bob Newhart? The man's panicked voice came from the darkness, asking many questions in French, only one of which Alex caught. Who are you? I'm Alex. Like I said, this is Bennett. Uh, Mon ami is Bennett. We're American. We need help. Please. The man continued, finishing with the word solda. No, we're not soldiers, Alex replied. We're civilians. Civilian? He said as Alex heard footsteps. A face, a little younger than his, faded into the light, with dried blood caked on his skin where it had run down his head and neck, soaking his white collar. His jaw quaked as he repeatedly licked his chapped, bloody lips. Alex smiled. Salut. Je m'appelle Alex. He put a hand on his own chest, showing his breathing speed. The man matched Alex in turn, lowering the barrel.
Good. Nice and slow, friend.
Relief and a sense of pride filled the teacher, as his tactics had bested Bennett's. But the sensation only lasted a moment, when an eruption of sound filled his ears. Screams and high-pitched wails. The voices were back.
Not now!
There was a multitude now, clear as day, whispering and shouting in his mind, wanting him to do every terrible thing imaginable. The bullet under his rib cage lit up, broiling his insides. There was no fighting his body's reaction. Alex seized and cried out. Through the haze of agony, he saw the man behind the door lift the shotgun, shouting in terror. Something was about to happen, and Alex could do nothing about it. Bennett's huge frame was swiftly at the door, where he wrestled with the man. Expecting to hear another gunshot, Alex heard only the voices in his mind as waves of blistering heat rolled through him. When the chaos in and out abated, Bennett was still in the process of pummeling the man and freeing the gun. Alex leapt into action. Wait, he's down! All right, stop! The man screamed, his hands in front of his bloodied face. Good. See? We're all okay now. Nobody needs to blow their stack, Alex said. Bennett, maybe we should ask our new friend what's going on? Bennett, staring daggers that didn't quit, finally got off the young man and huffed away to be alone as the man scampered into the corner to a new defensive position in front of a short cot. It was only then Alex noticed him, another man strapped to the bed, wrapped in blankets, his skin underneath covered by bloody bandages, racked with contusions. He was long dead. Who is that? Alex asked. The man knelt by the bed. Ahmed. My brother? Alex approached, rolling his steps from heel to toe slowly. I'm so sorry. What is your name? The young man spoke through tears, keeping his eyes and ears alert, as though expecting for the worst to happen at any moment. Yuri? Are you and your brother the only people here? Alex asked. Yuri nodded solemnly. Why are Alex here? That's a long story. Bennett loaded the shotgun in the corner, handling it as though he'd owned it all his life. Parker, can I talk to you alone? Alex stepped away from Yuri and his brother's body to meet Bennett in the next room, near the front door. What happened? He asked quietly. I searched the town. He's right, Bennett said. There's no one else around, and it's bad. Whoever came through, there's some gruesome shit here I've never seen. I think they might have been sacrificing people. There's no way, Alex said, half expecting Bennett to respond with, Of course not, stupid. But he didn't. The soldier's stare had never appeared so sober or direct. There was one, on a dinner table. They had their... Bennett was having trouble getting it out. Anyways, it's not important. There was a symbol. Kinda looks like an eye. My guess is whoever these gutter lickers were got their hands on Yuri's brother. Don't know how he lived, but now he's so scared he doesn't know what's what. I just hope to Christ whoever did this is far enough away they didn't hear those gunshots. Starting to sound like Izaiah's story about the ancient cult might not be so far-fetched, Alex said. Before Bennett could surely berate Alex, Yuri stepped into the doorway to the back room. Looking at the ground and holding his right elbow, he asked, Tea? Moments later, after Bennett lifted the kitchen table back into place, Yuri poured hot water from an electric kettle over ground tea leaves in a strainer, while Alex sat patiently in the kitchen, and Bennett stood at the front door, like a Doberman on guard. Once seated with their drinks, Alex asked Yuri about the attack on his village. The young man managed to answer, but only in spurts of dialogue so fevered and full of emotion they were hard to discern. They leave me alive, to be coward. Alex did his best to communicate, as well as to console him, while Bennett did little of either, and soon the morning sun's rays were streaming into the dusty shack. The temperature rose quickly as Alex pressed Yuri about the attackers, but he did not know much. They were an unidentified group who moved swiftly, made no demands, stole nothing, performed a strange ceremony before murdering each member of the town, and disappeared into the night. Yuri remembered the sounds of horse hooves as they left, but that was all. Sorry, no more. We need to leave. Do you have a working car? Car? Right? Bennett asked. Yuri grabbed Alex's arm and spoke frantically. He doesn't think we'll survive the trip, Alex translated. Bennett countered, offering to carry Yuri's brother's body to whatever transportation they might have access to. It took some persuading on Alex's part, but Yuri eventually agreed, leading them away from the home, with Bennett carrying Ahmed's blanket-wrapped body, bringing up the rear. In Yuri's backyard, they found a lime green pickup with a crushed front bumper, a roll cage, and an 8-inch lift kit. As Bennett laid Ahmed in the rear, a small brown falcon swooped by within mere feet of Alex's head.
That was the same one I saw eating the goat.
A sound like thunder rose from under their feet, just as 5 more falcons rose into view across town. Then 8. Then a dozen. Hawks and sparrows joined the mix as well. Soon a legitimate flock was aimed in the direction of the pickup, screaming as if alerting one another of a nearby predator. Hey, guys? Alex said wearily as the rumble vibrating his legs petered out into individual hits and low-frequency impacts.
Hooves.
That's them, Yuri said with no hint of hope in his voice. Bennett wasted no time slamming the rear gate shut and taking the driver's seat. Yuri tossed him the keys without argument and took the passenger seat. Alex jumped into the back of the pickup as the first wave of screeching birds came upon them, forcing him to drop to safety. The engine roared to life as a multitude of shapes emerged from behind the buildings in town, blurred by the heat rising from the desert floor. Horses in a charge became clear first, brown, black, gold, and spotted white, wrapped in cloth or leather. Their riders were seated high in the saddle, thrashing up and down as they rode, clad in dark natural colors, wielding handheld weapons Alex couldn't clearly make out. The soldier hit the gas, sending the truck forward, and Alex into the tailgate as Bennett took wild turns through the few buildings in their path, which were, unfortunately, poor obstacles for the riders. Their screams were all around, yelps and calls mixed with the shrieks of their birds overhead, seemingly intended to frighten, as was their effect. Metal scraped metal, and Bennett flung them back and forth in the fight to lose the fast-approaching horde. But when a pop overcame everything, the 4x4 jostled, and the soldier cursed in ways Alex never dreamed as the truck spun out of control, diving into a hillside face first with a thud. Yuri's truck fought valiantly upward, lurching like a dazed prizefighter on the mat before its engine gave out. It settled a few feet down the hill, coming to a halt as the horde, 25 strong at least, swiftly circled the truck. The riders had myriad skin colors to equal their horses' hair, and came in varying sizes, though most were plenty large enough to defend themselves. Doubly so, considering the rusty, custom, bladed weapons each carried. What little clothing they wore was made of leather and fur, some of which weren't yet cleaned of their blood and innards, making for a perfect treat for the birds on their shoulders to peck at. Covered from head to toe in white markings that appeared to be tribal, featuring partial circles that were sharp at the ends and bisected by hard lines, the riders' appearances offered no indication of letters, or language, or a way to distinguish them. There did not seem to be a leader, or individuals within the group, and only their birds spoke as they closed in like a high fence. "What are we doing?" Alex asked, leaning his face into the rear cab hatch. How do we get out of this? Not sure we can, Bennett said so calmly it hurt to hear. Nous avons fait de notre mieux. Yuri had his head leaned against the passenger window, looking so relaxed he could have taken a nap. As the riders waited, a small section of 6 broke away to approach the truck. Here we go, Bennett muttered. Yuri whispered a prayer to himself, the despair in his voice bleeding into Alex's mind, creating a pitiable, weak feeling within him.
There must be options.
He searched the truck bed, finding nothing of use.
How is this happening? This can't be real.
The 6 orbited the truck on horseback, looking over their potential prey until seemingly satisfied, then dismounted. 2 riders, each a head taller than Alex, seized and dragged him out of the truck bed. Following several prods and bruise-inducing traumas, he found his best course of action was not to struggle, despite the rage growing in his gut. Yuri was pulled from the truck and forced to the ground beside Alex as additional riders were called in to subdue Bennett, who managed to kill one of the riders with Yuri's shotgun. But with the gun empty, he was easily seized by a hulking figure who marched out of the riders' ranks. All it took was a single punch to the gut to send the soldier to the sand, where he was collected. Muttering the whole way, his mouth filling with blood, Bennett was plopped next to Alex in the lineup. Of the 3, only Yuri was calm and collected. I'm sorry. We did this, Alex said softly. The riders and their birds of prey went silent as the group split at the center. A smaller woman came through, wearing thick leather gloves held one over the other, with something dark and round resting in her palm. When she neared, Alex found it was a rock, one revered by the riders, judging from the way they parted for it. The gloved woman who was its keeper stood over Yuri and began speaking in a monotone language Alex didn't recognize, as though reading from a textbook, letting each syllable linger for as long as possible. The words gave Alex the same morose feeling he'd had when he was drunk and lost and alone once in Albuquerque in the middle of the night at age 22, after his friends ditched him. At the sight of the stone, Yuri's survival instincts seemingly kicked in. He thrashed and fought, screamed and threatened, but ultimately it did nothing. The gloved rider finished her sermon and held the stone forward, pressing it into Yuri's chest, where it sizzled on contact with his skin as the birds squawked with shrill calls. The instant the stone touched Yuri, a wave of boiling heat coursed through Alex's veins. His rage skyrocketed, his mind clouded. A scream came without choice. The voices in his head had returned en masse, calling for death and destruction. They wanted blood, and Alex felt himself falling into their desires. Shut up! Shut up! He shouted, gritting his teeth, as the gloved rider bared a long, slender blade over Yuri, who was frozen in place, eyes wide with terror. Yuri's jaw snapped open, fighting for air, as though something were blocking his esophagus. Tears streamed down his cheeks. Then the voices in Alex's mind stopped, and a cold recess opened within him, a void, as though his identity were erased, leaving him hollow. The gloved rider raised the blade, ready to strike, and a singular voice within the teacher spoke, not with words, but feelings. A pure and abhorrent hatred filled him. A swell of torrid heat was in his hands, and he was suddenly free, on his feet. The flash was all-encompassing, visceral, full of sound and light. Before he knew it, he was upon the gloved rider, his hands on her throat, ready to rip it open.